Hello everyone and welcome back to Fluent English. We're glad you're here. Whether you're commuting, studying at home, or squeezing in a little English practice during your day, thanks for spending some time with us. Today, we're talking about something that has become a huge part of modern work and study life: speaking confidently in online meetings.
Hey everyone, it's great to be back. Online meetings are just part of everyday life now. Whether it's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, or another platform, most of us spend at least some time in virtual meetings. And here's the interesting thing: even people with strong English skills sometimes feel nervous when it's their turn to speak.
That's so true. I still remember one of my first online meetings in English. Everything was going smoothly until someone asked for my opinion. Suddenly, my mind went completely blank. I knew the answer. I knew the vocabulary. But in that moment, it felt like every English word I'd ever learned had disappeared.
I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that. Actually, one of the biggest surprises for many English learners is realizing that confidence in meetings has very little to do with speaking perfect English. Most professionals aren't using complicated vocabulary all day. They're using clear, practical phrases to share ideas, ask questions, and respond to others.
Exactly, and that's what we're focusing on today. We're going to look at useful expressions you can use before, during, and after online meetings. You'll learn how to join discussions, ask for clarification, share opinions, agree politely, disagree professionally, and contribute more naturally to conversations.
Before we jump in, we'd love to hear from you. What's the most challenging part of speaking English during an online meeting? Is it finding the right words, speaking up at the right moment, understanding fast speakers? Let us know in the comments.
And if you enjoy practical English lessons like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Fluent English. It really helps us continue creating content for learners around the world.
All right, let's get started.
When it comes to online meetings, most communication falls into three basic categories. First, joining the conversation. Second, sharing information. And third, responding to other people. If you can do those three things comfortably, you're already on your way to becoming a more confident participant.
Here's something I noticed early in my career. I thought I needed dozens of advanced business expressions to sound professional. Turns out I didn't. A lot of meeting communication follows a very simple pattern: subject plus communication, verb plus information. For example, I'd like to share an update. I'd like to add something. I'd like to suggest an idea. I'd like to discuss a concern. Can I ask a question? Simple phrases like these show up in meetings every single day.
And there's a reason they work so well. Notice how many begin with "I'd like to." It's polite, professional, and direct. Compare these two sentences. I want to talk about something. I'd like to share a few thoughts. Both are correct, but the second one sounds smoother and more professional.
Here are a few useful phrases you can start using right away. Can everyone hear me? Thanks for joining today. Let's get started. I'd like to begin with a quick update. Before we move on, I'd like to mention something. If you're listening somewhere private, try saying a few of those out loud.
I use these constantly. For example, if I'm leading a meeting, I might say, "Thanks everyone for joining. I'd like to start with a quick project update." It's short, clear, and gets everyone focused right away.
Now let's imagine you're not leading the meeting. Maybe you're just participating and want to join the discussion. In that case, you could say, "I'd like to add something. Can I jump in here? I have a quick question. Could you clarify that point?" Those phrases make it much easier to enter the conversation naturally.
And if you've ever stayed quiet during a meeting because you weren't sure how to jump in, trust me, you are definitely not the only one. Almost everyone has experienced that at some point. The good news is that a few simple phrases can make a huge difference.
Let's practice together for a minute. I'll describe a situation and you think about what you might say. Ready? Let's start with a common one. You need more information about something that was just discussed. A natural response could be, "Could you explain that in a little more detail?" Simple, polite, and something you'll hear in meetings all the time.
Here's another situation. You want to share your opinion. A good way to start is, "From my perspective, I like this phrase because it sounds professional without sounding overly formal."
And what if you have an idea you'd like to contribute? You could say, "I'd like to suggest something." It's straightforward and easy to remember.
Now, not every meeting conversation is positive or certain. Sometimes you need to express doubt, confusion, or a limitation. For example, "I'm not sure I understand. I don't have that information right now. I can't see the presentation. I don't think that's the best option. These situations come up more often than you might think.
Especially that last one. A lot of English learners worry about disagreeing in meetings because they don't want to sound rude. The good news is that English offers plenty of ways to soften your message. Instead of saying, "I don't agree," you might say, "I'm not sure I agree completely," or "I see your point, but I have a different perspective."
That's a great example. You're still expressing your opinion, but you're doing it in a way that encourages discussion instead of creating tension.
Exactly, and honestly, that's how most professional conversations work. People disagree all the time. The difference is in how they communicate that disagreement.
Here's a quick challenge for everyone listening. Imagine someone just explained an idea, but you're still confused. What's the first thing you'd say? Take a second and think about it.
One easy answer is, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" It's one of the most useful phrases you can learn because you'll use it in almost every kind of meeting.
Another excellent option is, could you clarify what you mean? That shows you're engaged in the discussion and genuinely trying to understand.
And that's really the point. You don't need complicated vocabulary to be an effective communicator. You just need to make sure people understand you and that you understand them.
I actually learned that lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I spent so much energy trying to sound impressive that I sometimes forgot to ask questions when I was confused. Eventually, I realized that asking for clarification isn't a weakness. It's a sign that you're paying attention.
That's such an important point. Most experienced professionals would rather answer one extra question than discover later that everyone misunderstood the discussion.
So if there's one thing to remember from this section, it's this. Keep your language simple, speak up when you have something to contribute, and never hesitate to ask for clarification.
Exactly. Those small habits can make a huge difference in how confident and engaged you feel during online meetings.
Now that we've covered the basics of joining conversations and participating actively, let's move on to another skill that can completely change the way you sound in meetings: managing conversations effectively. We're talking about agreeing, disagreeing, interrupting politely, and helping discussions move forward.
That's right. A lot of learners know how to answer questions in English, but meetings aren't just about answering questions. Real meetings are interactive. People agree, disagree, ask for clarification, build on each other's ideas, and occasionally interrupt when they have something important to add. That's where these phrases become incredibly useful.
Let's start with something simple: agreeing with someone. When a colleague shares an idea you support, you can respond with phrases like, "I agree. That's a good point. I completely agree. I think you're right. That makes sense." These expressions are simple, but they're used constantly in professional conversations.
And here's something worth remembering. If you want to sound more engaged, don't stop at "I agree." Try adding a reason. For example, imagine someone says, "We should send the report before Friday." Instead of just saying, "I agree," you could say, "That's a good point. I think sending it early will help us stay on schedule." Now you're contributing to the discussion rather than simply confirming it.
Exactly. Even one extra sentence can make you sound more confident and involved. Now let's talk about the opposite situation: disagreement. This is where many English learners get nervous. Nobody wants to sound rude, especially in a professional environment.
I remember struggling with this myself. At first, I thought there were only two choices: either agree with everything, or say, "No, that's wrong." Thankfully, real communication isn't that extreme.
Definitely not. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," try phrases like, "I'm not sure I see it that way. I understand your point, but I have a slightly different perspective." Another option might be, these expressions allow you to disagree while still showing respect for the other person's opinion.
Let's hear what that sounds like in a real conversation. Imagine someone says, "We should postpone the project until next month." You might respond, "I understand your concern, but I think we can still meet the deadline if we adjust our priorities." Notice what's happening there. You're disagreeing, but you're also offering a solution.
That's an important distinction. Professional discussions are usually about solving problems together, not proving who's right.
Exactly, the goal is collaboration, not winning an argument.
Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable: interrupting. Most of us are taught not to interrupt people, and that's generally good advice. But meetings move quickly. Sometimes you need to jump in before the conversation moves on.
Especially when you finally thought of the perfect point to make.
We've all been there. Fortunately, there are polite ways to enter the conversation. For example, sorry to interrupt, but can I add something here? If I may jump in, before we move on. These phrases help your interruption feel natural and respectful.
Here's a situation many listeners will recognize. Everyone is discussing marketing plans, and suddenly you remember an important piece of customer feedback. You could say, "Before we move on, I'd like to mention something about the feedback we received from customers last month." Simple, professional, and perfectly acceptable.
Another common challenge is missing information. Maybe someone's microphone cuts out. Maybe the internet connection freezes. Or maybe your attention wandered for a second. We've all done that too.
Absolutely, in those situations, don't pretend you understood. Just ask. Useful phrases include, "Sorry, I missed that. Could you say that again? I didn't catch the last part. Could you repeat the numbers?"
And the great thing is that native speakers use these expressions constantly. You don't sound weak or unprepared when you ask for clarification. You sound engaged.
Exactly. In fact, asking a quick question is usually much better than staying confused for the rest of the meeting.
Let's do a short example conversation. I'll start. I think we should increase the advertising budget.
That's an interesting idea. Could you explain why you think that's necessary?
Sure, we've seen a significant increase in competition over the last few months.
That makes sense. I agree that visibility is becoming more important.
Notice how simple that exchange was. No advanced vocabulary, no complicated grammar, just clear communication.
That's something many learners underestimate. The people who sound professional aren't always using difficult English. More often, they're using simple English confidently.
Before we move on, let's quickly talk about formal and informal language. You'll hear both in workplace conversations. For example, formal, I'd like to raise a concern. More informal, I have a quick concern. Formal, could you elaborate on that point? More informal, could you explain that a bit more?
Both versions are correct. The best choice depends on who you're talking to and the situation you're in.
Here's a quick challenge for everyone listening. Imagine your manager presents an idea, but you're not completely convinced. How would you respond politely? Try starting with, "I understand your point, but..." Take a moment and say your answer out loud.
Nice, the more you practice these phrases before a real meeting, the easier they'll feel when the moment arrives.
One final tip. Try to avoid one-word responses whenever possible. Instead of saying, "Yes," or "Good idea," add a short explanation. It makes your contribution more valuable and keeps the conversation moving.
And don't forget a few useful transition phrases. Additionally, on the other hand, at the same time, they're small phrases, but they make your thoughts sound more organized and professional.
Exactly. So in this section, we've looked at how to agree professionally, disagree respectfully, interrupt politely, ask for clarification, and adapt your language to different situations.
And once you become comfortable with those skills, meetings start feeling a lot less stressful.
Next, let's talk about leading conversations and handling common meeting situations with confidence, even if you're not officially the person running the meeting.
One of the most useful skills you can develop in meetings is giving clear updates. Even if you're not leading the meeting, there will be times when people want to know where a project stands or what progress has been made. A few phrases you'll hear all the time are, "I'd like to provide a quick update. Here's where we are right now. Let me share our progress. We've completed the first phase." Simple, direct, and easy to understand.
And honestly, people appreciate updates that are clear and concise. Nobody enjoys listening to a 5-minute explanation when a 30-second update would do the job. For example, imagine your team is building a new website. You could say, "I'd like to provide a quick update. We've completed the design phase, and we're currently testing the user experience before moving into development." That's enough information to keep everyone informed without overwhelming them with details.
Exactly. One thing I learned early on is that good updates answer 3 questions. What have we completed? What are we working on now? What's happening next? If you cover those 3 points, you're usually in great shape.
That's a great framework. Now let's move on to another common meeting situation, assigning tasks. At some point, every meeting turns into action items. Someone has to do something after the meeting ends.
Right, you'll often hear phrases like, "Could you take care of that? Can you handle this part? Would you be able to follow up? Let's assign this task to Sarah." These are all common ways of delegating responsibilities.
And if you're the person receiving the task, it's helpful to respond clearly. For example, absolutely. I can do that. I'll take care of it. I'll follow up by Friday. Notice that these responses give confidence and clarity.
That's important because uncertainty creates confusion. If someone asks whether you can handle a task and your answer is just, maybe, people are left wondering what happens next.
Exactly. A clear response helps everyone stay aligned. Now let's talk about decision-making language. Many meetings exist for one reason: making decisions.
Sometimes it feels like that's the whole purpose of the meeting.
Very true, and when teams are trying to make decisions, you'll hear phrases like, let's decide on the next step. What do you recommend? What's our best option? Are we all in agreement? Let's move forward with this plan. These expressions help guide discussions toward action.
Let's hear a quick example. What should we do next?
I recommend moving forward with the current proposal.
That sounds reasonable. Are we all in agreement?
Yes, I think we're ready to proceed.
Short, simple, and productive.
Now let's shift our attention to something that doesn't get discussed enough: tone. A lot of learners focus heavily on grammar and vocabulary, which is understandable. But sometimes the difference between sounding professional and sounding rude comes down to tone rather than grammar.
Absolutely. Let's look at a simple example. Direct. Send me the report. More professional. Could you send me the report? Or, would you mind sending me the report? The meaning is almost identical, but the second version sounds much more collaborative.
And that's the style you'll hear in most professional environments. People often soften requests because it helps maintain positive working relationships.
Here's a quick practice exercise. We'll give you a direct sentence and you can turn it into a more polite version. Ready? Explain this. Pause for a second. A more professional version would be, could you explain this?
Let's try another. Repeat that. A more natural workplace version is, could you repeat that please? Small change, big difference.
Here's another tip that can instantly improve the way you sound in meetings. Try using positive language whenever possible.
That's a good one. For example, instead of saying, that's a problem, you might say, that's something we need to address. Instead of, this won't work, you could say, we may need to consider another approach.
Notice how the second versions sound more solution-focused. They're not ignoring the issue. They're simply framing it in a constructive way.
And that's exactly what effective communication is about: identifying challenges while keeping the conversation productive.
I once worked with a manager who rarely used negative language. Even when there was a serious issue, he'd say something like, okay, let's figure out how we can improve this. The result was that people focused on solutions instead of blame.
That's a great habit to develop. And speaking of habits, confidence is built the same way. Not overnight, not after one meeting, but through consistent practice.
That's why we have a challenge for you. After this episode, choose 3 phrases you've learned today and use them in your next meeting. Not 10 phrases, not 20, just 3.
Practice them out loud first. Then use them in a real conversation. You'll be surprised how quickly they start feeling natural.
And if you have a favorite meeting phrase, we'd love to hear it. Share it in the comments and let us know why you like it.
So before we move on, let's quickly recap what we've covered. We've talked about giving updates, assigning tasks, making decisions, improving your tone, using positive language, and leading conversations more effectively.
And those skills don't just help you speak English better. They help you communicate more confidently in any professional setting.
Next, let's look at some of the most common mistakes English learners make during meetings, and how to avoid them. Let's talk about something every language learner deals with at some point: mistakes. And trust me, we've made plenty of them ourselves.
More than I'd like to admit, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about fluent speakers is that they never make mistakes. The truth is, they made lots of mistakes. They just kept speaking anyway.
Exactly. And today we're going to look at a few common mistakes that show up in professional meetings so you can avoid them. Let's start with one that many learners have heard before. Mistake number 1, I am agree. The correct version is, I agree.
I still remember saying that years ago. At the time, it sounded perfectly logical to me. Nobody corrected me, so I kept saying it for quite a while before realizing it wasn't correct.
It's an easy mistake to make. The reason it's incorrect is that agree is already a verb. You don't need to add am before it. For example, incorrect, I am agree with this idea. Correct, I agree with this idea. Another example, Incorrect, agree. Correct, I agree.
If you've ever made that mistake, don't worry. A huge number of English learners have done exactly the same thing.
Now let's move to mistake number 2, being too direct. Technically, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't agree. The grammar is fine, but depending on the situation, it can sound a little stronger than you intend.
Especially in workplace discussions, most professionals try to soften disagreement because the goal is to keep the conversation productive. Instead, you could say, I'm not sure I agree completely. I see your point, but I have a different perspective. I understand your reasoning. However,
Notice how these alternatives create space for discussion. You're sharing your opinion without sounding confrontational.
and honestly, that skill becomes more important as your career grows. People don't just listen to what you say, they pay attention to how you say it.
Very true. Now let's look at another common expression. Many learners say, I have a doubt.
This one is interesting because you'll hear it in some parts of the world, but in many English-speaking workplaces, people are more likely to say, I have a question, or I have a concern.
Let's compare them. Less natural, I have a doubt. More natural, I have a question about that. Or, I have a concern regarding the timeline. Those versions are more commonly used in professional conversations.
Here's another mistake that doesn't involve grammar at all. One-word answers. Imagine your manager asks, what do you think? And you respond, good. Technically, you've answered the question. But the conversation doesn't really go anywhere from there.
Exactly. A stronger response might be, I think it's a good idea because it could save us time. Or, I like the proposal because it addresses the main issue. You don't need a long answer, just a little extra detail.
That's one of the easiest ways to sound more confident in meetings, not by using bigger words, just by expanding your answers slightly.
Now let's talk about something I see all the time with English learners. Over-apologizing.
Oh yes, you've probably heard things like, sorry, my English isn't very good. Sorry, maybe this is wrong. Sorry, sorry, sorry.
We all want to be polite, and that's understandable. But if every sentence begins with an apology, it can make you sound less confident than you really are.
Instead of saying, sorry, my English is bad, try focusing on your idea. For example, here's my perspective, or let me explain what I mean. The attention stays on your message instead of your language ability.
I once heard someone start a meeting contribution by saying, sorry for speaking. And I remember thinking, that's literally why we're all here.
Exactly. Meetings are designed for people to share ideas. You don't need permission to participate.
Let's do a quick review exercise. I'll say the mistake. You say the correction. Ready? I am agree.
I agree.
Great, I have a doubt.
I have a question.
Perfect, I don't agree. Can you make it softer?
I'm not sure I agree completely.
Nice.
Here's something worth remembering. Every confident English speaker you know has made thousands of mistakes, probably tens of thousands. The difference is that they didn't stop speaking because of those mistakes.
That's such an important point. Progress comes from participation, not perfection. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll become.
So don't wait until your English feels perfect. Start using these phrases now. Use them in meetings, use them in conversations, use them whenever you get the opportunity.
Because confidence isn't something that appears one day. It's something you build through practice.
Exactly. Learn from mistakes, keep improving, and most importantly, keep speaking.
All right, it's time for a little challenge. Let's see how well you've absorbed today's phrases. We're going to play a quick game called Choose the Better Sentence.
Don't worry, this isn't a test. Think of it as a chance to practice making more natural choices in professional English. We'll give you a situation and 2 possible responses. See if you can pick the better option before we reveal the answer.
Ready? Let's jump in. Situation number 1. You want someone to repeat what they just said. Option A, say again. Option B, could you repeat that, please? Take a second and decide.
The better choice is option B. Could you repeat that, please? It's polite, professional, and something you'd hear regularly in workplace conversations.
Option A isn't necessarily rude, but it can sound abrupt depending on the situation. A small adjustment makes a big difference.
Let's try another one. Situation number 2. You'd like to contribute an idea to the discussion. Option A, I won't speak. Option B, I'd like to add something. What's your answer?
Hopefully you chose option B, I'd like to add something. It's natural, professional, and gives you a smooth way to enter the conversation.
Plus, it's one of those phrases you'll probably use again and again, definitely worth remembering.
Situation number 3, you disagree with a suggestion. Option A, you're wrong. Option B, I understand your point, but I have a different perspective, which sounds more professional.
That's an easy one. Option B, not because you're avoiding disagreement, but because you're expressing it respectfully.
Exactly. In professional settings, people often disagree. The goal is to keep the conversation productive.
Situation number 4, you don't fully understand something. Option A, I don't understand. Option B, could you clarify that for me? Take a moment.
Option B sounds much more natural in a meeting environment. It shows you're engaged and looking for more information rather than simply stopping the conversation.
All right, last one. Situation number 5, your manager asks for feedback on a proposal. Option A, good. Option B, I think it's a good idea because it could improve efficiency.
Option B wins again. And this highlights something we've talked about throughout today's episode. Adding just one extra sentence can make you sound much more confident and engaged.
Exactly. A lot of people think confidence comes from advanced vocabulary. In reality, confidence often comes from giving complete responses.
Now let's make this a little more practical. Instead of choosing between our answers, try creating your own. Imagine these situations. You need to disagree politely. You want to ask for clarification. You need to give a quick project update. What would you say?
If you're listening somewhere private, pause the episode and answer out loud. Seriously, reading English helps, listening helps, but speaking is where real improvement happens.
And remember, there isn't always one perfect answer. For example, instead of saying, could you clarify that? You might say, could you explain that a bit more? Or, could you expand on that point? Different words. Same purpose.
That's one of the reasons English can feel less intimidating once you gain confidence. There are usually several good ways to express the same idea.
Exactly. The goal isn't memorizing every possible phrase. The goal is building a small collection of expressions you can use comfortably and consistently.
And here's a challenge for this week. Pick one meeting phrase from today's episode and make a point of using it in your next conversation or meeting. Just one. Start small. Build momentum.
We'd love to hear which phrase you choose, so feel free to share it in the comments.
Most importantly, remember this, real conversations aren't perfect. People pause, they rephrase things, they ask questions, they make mistakes, and that's completely normal.
What matters is communicating clearly and participating confidently. That's where real progress happens. Wow, we've covered a lot in today's episode. From joining conversations and sharing ideas to handling disagreements, asking questions, giving updates, and leading discussions, we've explored many of the phrases that can help you feel more comfortable in online meetings.
And the good news is that none of these phrases are particularly complicated. You don't need advanced business vocabulary. You don't need perfect grammar. And you definitely don't need to sound like a dictionary.
That's something we really want listeners to remember. A lot of people think confidence comes after they become fluent. But in reality, confidence often comes first. You start speaking, you gain experience, and your fluency grows along the way.
Exactly. Think about the most confident speakers you've met. Most of them aren't searching for impressive words. They're focused on communicating clearly, and that's a skill anyone can develop.
If you take away just 3 ideas from today's episode, let them be these. First, participate, even if it's only one comment or one question. Second, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. And third, focus on communication rather than perfection.
I really like that last one, because perfection is a moving target. No matter how advanced your English becomes, there will always be new words to learn and new situations to navigate. But communication starts today.
Exactly. And every time you contribute to a meeting, ask a question, share an idea, or express an opinion, you're building a little more confidence. Those small moments add up over time.
Before we finish, here's something we'd love for you to do. Think back to all the phrases we covered today. Which one are you most likely to use in your next online meeting? Maybe it's, could you clarify that? I'd like to add something. Or, I understand your point, but pick one and keep it in mind for your next conversation.
And when you use it, you'll realize something interesting. The phrase itself isn't what matters most. It's the fact that you're participating. That's where growth happens.
Absolutely, language learning isn't a spectator sport. You get better by using the language, sometimes confidently, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with mistakes, but always by participating.
We hope today's episode has given you practical tools you can start using right away. And if it has, we'd really appreciate your support. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode with someone who's working on their English communication skills.
Every comment, like, and subscription helps us continue creating lessons and conversations for English learners around the world. And honestly, reading your comments is one of our favorite parts of making these episodes.
It really is. We love hearing about your progress, your challenges, and the moments when something finally clicks.
So keep practicing, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep showing up in those conversations even when you're nervous.
Because every conversation is another step forward.
Thanks for spending part of your day with us.
We appreciate every one of you.
Take care, keep learning, and keep building your confidence one conversation at a time.
And we'll see you in the next episode of Fluent English.
See you next time.